Many people around the world share a certain image of Japan. Trains that run on time, orderly streets, polite people. For many outsiders, Japan almost looks like a perfectly functioning machine. Trains arrive to the second. Streets are clean. People follow the rules. It feels efficient. It feels orderly, almost frictionless. But machines only work when every gear keeps turning. And sometimes those gears cannot stop, even when they want to. In the morning streets of Tokyo, salarymen in black suits move in steady streams from station to station. The sight looks almost like the gears of a single society, turning with perfect precision. And at the center of that image is what Japan calls the salaryman. The word salaryman means more than just someone who works at a company. In Japan, it represents a whole way of life. You graduate from university, join a company, commute by train every day, and work late into the night. Sometimes you go drinking with your boss or colleagues, and then wake up and do it all over again. Technically, these gatherings are optional, in much the same way that breathing is technically optional. You live this way for decades. For a long time, this was simply considered a normal life in Japan. I walked away from that life, but many of my friends and countless other office workers are still living it, putting in long hours under relentless pressure. And even when they think, I want to quit, actually doing so in Japan can be surprisingly difficult. In Japan, leaving a company is a major decision in itself. For some people, it's genuinely life-changing. For me, it was a decision that made my hands shake. So why are Japanese workers so afraid to quit? Today, I want to explore that question through my own experience. I think some of what I share might surprise you. I'm 37 and I live near Tokyo. I spent many years working as a company employee. I've worked at 3 companies in Japan and 1 abroad, and I've lived overseas for about 5 years in total. So I know Japanese corporate culture from the inside, and I know what it looks like from the outside. In the end, I quit. But before I did, I was scared. Genuinely scared. Here's why. The easy answer is that Japanese people are simply serious about their work. But from the inside, it doesn't feel like loyalty or dedication. It feels like fear. Based on my own experience, I think there are 5 main reasons. Before going into those reasons, it helps to understand something about the Japanese job market. Compared to many Western countries, people in Japan change jobs far less often. For example, in the United States, changing companies every few years is completely normal. In Japan, however, staying with the same company for decades was long considered the ideal career path. This idea grew out of the post-war system of lifetime employment. Large companies would hire new graduates and keep them until retirement. In return, employees were expected to remain loyal, and they were rewarded with stable salaries and seniority-based promotions. Of course, this system has slowly begun to change in recent years, but its influence on how people think about work is still very strong. In fact, the average Japanese worker changes jobs only about 2 to 3 times over the course of their life. In the United States, by comparison, the average person changes jobs around 11 to 12 times. That means switching jobs roughly once every 4 years. In many Western countries, changing jobs is not unusual. In fact, it is often seen as an important way to advance your career or gain new skills. Japan, on the other hand, still has a strong culture of long-term employment. The average length of time people stay at a single company is also relatively long. Because of that, for many Japanese workers, leaving a company doesn't simply feel like changing jobs. It can feel like stepping outside the expected path of life. As a result, quitting a company in Japan is rarely seen as just another step in a career. For many people, it feels more like a major life decision. Reason 1. No time or energy to job hunt. In many countries, it's normal to quit first and then look for your next job. But in Japan, having a gap in your employment history is widely seen as a red flag. So most people job hunt while still employed. And that is so much harder than it sounds. At the time, I was living about an hour and a half from Tokyo by train. One evening, I managed to slip out of the office early and rushed out at 6 p.m. I ran to the station and jumped on a train to Tokyo, frantically reviewing for my interview on my phone the whole way. When I caught my reflection in the train window, I looked exhausted. My workday had just ended, but the real work was only just beginning. That feeling was suffocating. Job hunting is supposed to be an act of hope, but in reality, you're doing it completely drained. With whatever energy the company left you, it felt less like a bold step forward and more like reaching out a hand from a sinking ship. By the time the interview ended, it was night. I ducked into a nearby beef bowl restaurant and ate alone. I didn't explain myself very well, I thought, replaying it all on the train home. I got back after midnight, and the next morning, I went back to the same office. Every day felt like thrashing through darkness with no end in sight. Doing all of this while working full-time pushed me right to my physical limit. So most people just take the easiest option. They stay. And I came to realize something. Preparing to quit might actually be harder than quitting itself. Reason 2. Fear of your boss. In Japanese workplaces, your relationship with your manager is everything. The culture of reading the room and not rocking the boat runs deep. Power harassment, unfortunately, is still very much alive in many workplaces. I had a boss who screamed at people regularly. He had a particular move. If he spotted you eating lunch, he'd say, "Must be nice, eating at your own pace. I don't even have time for that." It wasn't a compliment. The message was clear. If you have time to sit and eat, you should be out closing deals. After that, I stopped taking a proper lunch break. I learned to eat a convenience store rice ball and chicken skewer with one hand while driving. But the fear wasn't just about the moment of being yelled at. It was what came after. Once someone speaks to you harshly enough, you start policing yourself. Even on your lunch break, you can't fully relax. Just sitting in your chair, you wonder, should I really be doing this right now? The voice stays in your head long after your boss has left the room. When that happens, even if you want to quit, you shrink before you ever get the chance to say so out loud. Reason 3. The guilt of letting people down. Another weight pressing down on me was the guilt I felt toward my colleagues. Japanese workplaces place a huge emphasis on teamwork and harmony. When one person leaves, their work lands on everyone who stays. I had co-workers who had always looked out for me. So every time I thought about quitting, the same thoughts would creep in. If I leave, they'll be overwhelmed. They'll resent me. They'll think I betrayed them. Those feelings alone kept me trapped, even when I desperately wanted to go. One day, a co-worker took paid leave. Another employee muttered, "Because of him being out, now we're all slammed." In that moment, I understood. Taking time off means someone else has to pick up the slack. After that, I never used a single vacation day except for weddings and funerals, or maybe I just couldn't bring myself to. In many European countries, people take vacation without thinking twice. In Japan, people sometimes apologize before taking a day off, and then apologize again after coming back. Japan's paid leave usage is also relatively low compared to many other countries. In one survey, more than 60% of Japanese workers said they feel guilty about taking paid vacation. In many parts of the world, that number would be hard to imagine. In Japan, exercising your right to take time off can sometimes feel like you are letting your team down. In Japan, even calling in sick can feel like something you should apologize for. Paid leave is a legal right, but in the atmosphere of most workplaces, your emotions move faster than your rights. Someone will have to cover for me. They'll think I picked the worst time to be out. The moment those thoughts take over, taking a day off stops feeling like rest and starts feeling like putting yourself in debt to your colleagues. People who are afraid to quit are almost always the same people who are afraid to take a day off. Reason 4. The fear of being pressured to stay in Japan. Companies will sometimes go to remarkable lengths to stop someone from leaving. When a subordinate resigns, the manager feels personally responsible. When I told my company I wanted to quit, the branch manager and deputy branch manager invited me out for drinks. We were shown to a private room, and they took the seats on either side of me. The atmosphere was heavy from the moment we sat down. There was food on the table, but I barely tasted any of it. There was just this persistent feeling of having nowhere to go. The words were kind, but I felt every exit closing. In Japan, a direct, "don't you dare quit," is actually easier to push back against. It's the approach that uses warmth, shared history, and obligation that's truly hard to refuse. Over round after round of sake, they said things like, "You're doing a great job. We know how hard it's been." By the time I was thoroughly drunk, I was dangerously close to saying, "I'll give it a little longer." And then came an offer I hadn't expected. "Why don't you stay at my place tonight? We can keep talking." Later, they went to visit my parents. "Your son is working really hard. He has so much potential still ahead of him." They were trying to pressure me through my own family. This kind of tactic wraps employees in guilt and doubt until they can't find their way out. Some companies even refuse to accept a written resignation letter. Reason 5. Financial fear. Another important factor is how hiring works in Japan. Many companies recruit almost all of their employees straight out of university. Once you enter a company, you are trained for that specific organization. Your skills become tied to that company. So when you leave, you are often starting from zero again. In Japan, stability is treated almost as a value in itself. The fear of ending up worse off after changing jobs is always hovering. Being criticized day after day quietly chips away at your confidence. That happened to me too. After being yelled at by a harsh boss over and over, I started to doubt my own abilities. What if I fail at the next company too? What if I give up this stability and end up regretting it? On top of that, there's a widespread belief in Japan that once you're over 35, changing jobs becomes difficult. So many people feel a ticking clock, and once that deadline passes, they convince themselves there's no way out. What's strange is that the more cornered a person feels, the more they tend to believe that leaving their current company would mean the end. Even when the real problem is just a toxic environment, you start to feel like the problem is you. Being told no every day narrows your vision. Job hunting is supposed to be about seeing a wider world. But back then, I felt like my current company's opinion of me was the only opinion that existed. A service that only exists in Japan. Japan has a service that is almost unheard of anywhere else in the world. Imagine hiring someone to call your boss and say, "I quit for you." For many people outside Japan, that sounds unbelievable. It's called resignation agency, a service where a third party contacts your company on your behalf, so you never have to say, "I quit" yourself. From the outside, it might sound strange. Can't you just tell them? Legally, yes, but in reality, saying those words means walking through layer after layer of psychological barriers. You might get screamed at. You might get blamed. You might get pressured to stay. For someone who gets a stomach ache just walking into the building, that final conversation carries an almost unbearable weight. That's why the service exists and why it's needed. At first, people laughed. Who would actually use something like that? Today, more than 20,000 people use it every year. That number tells you everything about how many people want to leave but feel completely unable to. I eventually quit, and in the moment I did, two feelings hit me at the same time: fear and relief. The morning after felt different. I woke up and didn't have to think, I have to go to work. Just the absence of that thought made it easier to breathe. But alongside the relief came anxiety, a feeling of being untethered from society. Walking around in the middle of a weekday felt strange. Everyone else was at work. I was somewhere else. There was an odd guilt to that at first. Quitting a job in Japan isn't just losing your income. It's stepping slightly outside of what's considered normal. I felt that more clearly than ever in those early days. A Japanese company gives you a lot: stable income, social standing, the respect of people around you. When you leave that system, you give up the protection it provided. In Japan, a company employee can expect a pension of roughly 140,000 to 150,000 yen per month in retirement. Become self-employed, and that figure drops to around 50,000 yen, less than half. So many people think quitting is just too risky. That fear is one of the most powerful forces keeping people locked in place. Freelancers and the self-employed also find it harder to get bank loans, and the way some people look at you quietly shifts. After I quit, I went to a friend's wedding. A high school classmate said to me, "Wait, you quit your job? That takes guts." On the surface, it sounds like a compliment, but in Japan, it carries a different weight. What they really mean is, "Are you going to be okay?" Or even, "That was a pretty reckless thing to do." I felt a quiet sting when I heard it. For a while, I stopped seeing that friend. Even so, I don't regret it, because something shifted inside me. I stopped caring so much about what other people think, and I was finally able to start doing the things I actually wanted to do. Interestingly, younger generations in Japan are starting to question this system. More people are changing jobs, more people are choosing freelance work, but the old expectations are still there. So many young workers are caught between two worlds: the traditional path of stability and the modern desire for freedom. The answer to "why don't Japanese people quit" is complicated. It's not loyalty, it's not discipline. It's pressure, fear, responsibility, and the very real risk of losing the stability you've built. All of it tangled together. But quitting can also give you something: the freedom to choose your own path. If you're watching this from another country, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. How easy is it to quit a job where you live? Is changing careers something totally normal? Or do you feel a pressure that sounds familiar to what I've described? Seeing how people work around the world might just change the way you see work itself. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you're interested in documentaries about what life in Japan is really like, the side that most media doesn't show, consider subscribing. You might find something that surprises you. See you in the next one.